Hey guys, welcome to the first video on Kakuninfo. I'm Rashid, I'm from Bangladesh and I have been here in Japan for 5 years. It's my 5th year running and I am in Beppu. It's a city in Oita Prefecture and I just finished my undergrad studies last year September and I'm working here in Japan full time. And I made this channel for people who are planning to study, travel or live in Japan, so that I can share some tips to fellow foreigners who want to come to Japan, make a living in Japan, and so it helps you throughout your life in Japan. And I myself faced a situation where I couldn't find information regarding certain topics online or asking people. So I had to dig myself, I had to go through those processes myself, and what happened is I myself found out the information. So what I wanted to do is all the experience that I've had in the past 5 years, share it with you people who are planning to come to Japan, and maybe this will help you through your journey in Japan. For the first video, I wanted to share 5 things that I have realized being in Japan, and hope this video brings some value to you. And if you are someone who's planning to study, travel or live in Japan, do remember to subscribe to the channel because there's lots of videos coming up. Okay, let's get to point number 1. The first point is that Japanese language is really important. I know it's a no-brainer. I know if you're someone planning to come to Japan, you might think, okay, that's not something new, but I actually want to emphasize on the importance of Japanese, because nowadays I see a lot of people who talk about studying in Japan when you don't need Japanese, because there are a lot of universities that are offering courses in English nowadays, full English courses. You don't need to study a single thing in Japanese. But the problem is the society in Japan. When you want to live in Japan, Japanese is really important. When you go to shops to buy, when you want to pay your bills, when you want to make anything in Japan, do anything, Japanese is the utmost important. So even though if you're a student, you're studying everything in English, you'll face a lot of problems if your basic Japanese isn't that good. And just basic isn't enough if you want to live in Japan. So if you want to live in Japan, have your own business or work somewhere, the amount of Japanese you know really impacts what kind of job you get. For example, if you want a job in the top level companies, you basically need N1 or N2 Japanese level. And that's really important to have if you want to get the great jobs. But if you're okay with mid-tier jobs or English teaching jobs, you don't need that amount of Japanese. But Japanese is really important. You have to keep that in mind. And if you're someone who's planning to have a business in Japan, Japanese is completely important. If you're someone like me who's a content creator, even then Japanese is important, because some of your content needs to have a bit of Japanese, like subtitles, or you have to communicate with people, other content creators, and in those cases Japanese is really important. So keep it in your mind before coming to Japan, or if you're planning to living in Japan, Japanese is really important. It's really hard to learn at the beginning, but with time, you slowly, with the environment you're in, you get a grasp of the language. But it's really important. Keep it in mind that Japanese, the amount of Japanese you speak really elevates you on the way you live in Japan. Point number 2 is that Japan is not as expensive as I thought it was. So before coming to Japan, I did my own research and I talked to people who have been in Japan before. A lot of people talk about how expensive Japan is. And mind you, if you're thinking that I'm living in Beppu, which is a small city in Oita Prefecture, it's not that expensive. Yes, it's correct. But I thought Japan was more expensive. I have been to Tokyo and other big cities, and I don't think Japan is as expensive as people think it is. And I think there are ways around cutting expenses. If you want to know how, keep on watching the channel, because I'll be sharing tips on how you can live on a budget, how you can save money and not spend that much in Japan, because I think a lot of things come really cheap in Japan. For example, second-hand stuff. A lot of people try to buy new phones, new laptops, new clothes and all of new things, and I think Japan is the best place to buy second-hand things, because their second-hand things are in top-notch condition. You won't even realize that they're second-hand. So one tip in this video I suggest is that if you're living in Japan, try to buy second-hand stuff, because they're really great, really amazing. And there are more tips that I'll share in a separate video where we'll talk about how to finance yourself in Japan and save money. Point number 3 is that Japan is not as technologically advanced as it seems. Before coming to Japan, a lot of times when I Google Japan or talk with people, I got to know that Japan is in the future. Everything's so fast and everything's new. And it's true. When you go to Tokyo, it's true. There's a lot of things, new technology that you'll see there. But when you go out from Tokyo, because Tokyo is the capital and that's where everyone thinks that that's what Japan is, but that's not what Japan is. If you look at other cities like Kyoto, Osaka, Fukuoka, they are technology advanced too. But the problem is when you look in the offices, I made a separate video on a different channel. I'll put the link there where I talk about how Japanese companies still use software or hardware that's like really old. They use computers that are bulky, they use software like Windows Vista, Windows 7. Windows XP. How many of you still use that? Let me know in the comments below. I don't think a lot of you still use that. But big Japanese corporations, small Japanese corporations, all of them still use backdated technology, which was surprising for me to know. For me, like few years back, I was trying to start my own business, and living in a small city in Japan, I was thinking about how I can use like mobile applications or build a website for the people here. But then I realized that a lot of people don't use website or mobile applications that much. Like they are still stuck in some of the traditional media. For example, when you want to market a product here in Japan, especially in the cities that are not popular, in those cities, traditional media works better than social media. If you go put leaflets or you put an ad on newspaper, that works more than other ways of marketing. That might be surprising because in the whole world, when they're shifting to online media, still a lot of cities in Japan, they're still stuck in traditional media. And that's just one aspect. If you want to know more, keep on watching the channel. I'll share a lot of more insights that I get throughout my life here in Japan. The fourth point, and the point that I love the most, is Japan does customer service the best. If you have been in Japan, you will know what I'm talking about. When you go to a store and when you go to find a product and you ask the shopkeeper that I want this, she or he will work their best to find the product for you. They'll run around the whole store and look for the product that you wanted. And even if they can't find it, they'll come and apologize multiple times. And I'm not saying you have to apologize multiple times. Japanese people have this tendency. But the fact that their customer service is so great that you feel really served. When you think about the kings and queens and when they have servants, you really feel like a king when you are in a Japanese shop. It doesn't matter what kind of shop it is. It's a restaurant or a shop for clothes or a shop for bicycles. The customer service is same more or less everywhere. They put the customer first, and that's something I have loved throughout my time here in Japan. Whenever I go to a store, I see the behavior so similar regardless of which city I go, which store I go to. And that's something amazing. I don't know how they have built up the system, but if you are in the service industry and if you want to learn about customer service, come to Japan because you will see how they treat their customers. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have its bad sides, because in order to have this best customer service, there is a downside to it too, because I have myself worked in the service industry, I've worked in restaurants, hotels, and I know how tough it is to have that customer service level. And I'll talk about it in a different video, but I love the customer service in Japan, and I bet if you come here, you'll love it too. The fifth realization that I have had in Japan in the past 5 years is that Japanese system or Japanese people do English teaching really wrong. Like if you come to Japan, if you're someone living in Japan, you already know that Japanese people have this tendency to put so much effort in learning English, and you'll see so many English schools, you'll see so many programs where people are teaching English, you'll see online teaching, offline teaching, it's everywhere, but still their English speaking is really, really bad. And the main reason is that, I read this in one comment in one of my Facebook groups, where I read that Japan is a country where the English teachers pretend that they're teaching English and the Japanese students pretend that they're learning English, and that's absolutely right. No matter how much effort an English teacher gives in the first month, it reduces following the second, third, fourth month, because the Japanese students are not that enthusiastic about learning English. They think that it's kind of a thing that they have to pass through their high school and they're done. If you don't believe me, most Japanese students, they have to study English throughout their high school. But the problem is when they graduate, they don't end up speaking as good of English. Because when I go to stores and different places, when I see the Japanese people, most of them till high school, I think they had some form of English education. And if that form of English education was given to any other country, I think those people will at least understand a bit of English. But that's not the case. The Japanese students, they tend to try to learn English, they give the examination, they don't do that well, and their speaking doesn't end up being good enough. And that's a big problem in Japan, because while the world is advancing and Japan has a lot of different cool things, the communication gap, because of the amount of English they speak, if you want to start your own business, if you want to live here, not having that comfort of being able to speak English is a really big problem. And I think the system needs to change, and I hope myself I can try and contribute something to the system. But that's one thing I realized, that Japanese people don't tend to learn English properly, even though there's so many places where they can go and learn English. And that's it. That's the 5 main realizations I have had in my 5 years in Japan. There's a lot of other things that I actually realized, and if I talked about those, it's gonna be a really long video. So I wanted to keep it short, 5 main things that I realized. And if you found the video interesting, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And please leave in the comments below what else do you want to know about Japan. It might be about studying, traveling, or living in Japan. I have experienced Japan for 5 years now and really want to help people who are planning to come to Japan. So any questions you have, leave it in the comments below and I will get to each and every question. And if they're broad questions, I'll make a video about them. And stick around because there are more videos coming. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.